Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar entitled Blackbaud to Salesforce A. That's my best Canadian accent for you. My name is Sterrin Bird, and I am a Senior Director and Nonprofit Industry Advisor here at Salesforce. And I am so grateful that our partners at Belmar Consulting have pulled this together today to have a terrific conversation about what it means to migrate from Blackbaud to Salesforce successfully. I can share just briefly by way of introduction, and then I'll invite my guests to introduce themselves, and we'll jump into this. But first, a few housekeeping items. So first, we would invite all of you to please remain on mute so that way we can hear what the presenters are speaking about, and then we will have time at the end of our webinar for Q&A. You are welcome at any point to drop questions into the chat box, and we have trusty moderators that are watching the chat box, and we will get to your questions as we move through the discussion. The best viewing experience I would just offer is to use the speaker view. So if you look at the bottom, and there's different ways that you can look at Zoom. And at this point, after 3 years of this, I think we're all well able to do it. Just use the speaker view, and that we will be recording this as well. And if you have to leave early or you miss some portion of it, it will be posted on our social channels afterwards. And with that, I think that's the housekeeping piece. So what I'm going to first do is just quickly introduce the topic, tell you a little bit more about myself, and then I will ask my friends Frank and Karl to introduce themselves as well. So again, my name is Sterrin Bird. I am a Senior Director here at Salesforce. I joined Salesforce about 2 years ago after spending nearly 28 years in the nonprofit sector as a Chief Development Officer. So I am one of you. I have spent my life fundraising and wrestling with and dealing with data in order to achieve my fundraising targets, and have also successfully, as a customer and as a development officer, migrated from Blackbaud to Salesforce 3 times myself with my teams. So I know from whence I speak. And I'm excited to have this conversation with two of my favorite people, Karl and Frank. So I'm going to ask you gentlemen to introduce yourselves. I think that you can do yourselves a lot more justice than I can. So can I begin with Karl, and can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, your organization, and we'll take it from there.
Certainly. Thank you, Sterrin. Pleasure to be here. I am the Senior Manager of Stewardship and Donor Retention here at the Mustard Seed. And we support 5 cities in our one in British Columbia in Kamloops, and then we've got 4 other cities here in Alberta. And so I'm just one part of a fund development department, and I oversee the contact center, which we just started last summer and is going really well. The donor relations team, so we process all the gifts here, and our data team, which essentially is responsible for our Salesforce and our CRM. So yeah, I've been working in nonprofit for 20 years and did business development, for in a for-profit company with different databases. So that's kind of my background. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karl. Frank?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Frank Lombardo. I'm the Vice President of IT and Digital Ecosystems at CNIB. If you don't know the acronym, that is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. We are a 100-year-old organization serving blind and partially sighted Canadians across the country. What that means is we have a lot of programs and services. We do a lot of fund development. In my mind, we're an incredibly unique organization in the types of programs and services that we run. And our journey with Salesforce goes, well beyond what we've done to transition from Blackbaud to actually operating the majority of our business on the Salesforce platform. And so I'm really happy to be here today because we have a lot of experience that I do enjoy sharing.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. So the format for today, just for the group, for those of you that have been kind enough to join us, is we're really just going to have a conversation. And the idea being that I'm going to invite Karl and Frank to react to some of the questions I'm asking and share their personal experience. And again, we invite all of you to get your curious and your courageous hats on and ask questions and listen deeply and think about your own organization, where you are in terms of managing your data, whether it's for fundraising programs, et cetera, and ask those questions and always know that even if we run out of time today, myself, Frank, Karl, and the team at Belmar are welcome and here for you to explore more deeply if you have additional questions beyond our hour together this morning. So with that, I'm going to just jump right in, and I think I'm going to start with you, Frank, if you don't mind, and ask you quickly, not quickly, because I know this is a really great story because I've talked to you at length about it before, but talk to the group a little bit about what some of the reasons were that CNIB made the move from Blackbaud to Salesforce and what that looked like and the decision process and who all was involved.
Sure thing. We were on Blackbaud Razor's Edge for a number of years, and it was part of our transformation. Like, we were digitizing everything. Our move to the cloud was happening about 5 years ago now. And so one of the key factors was looking at what other organizations like ours were doing. So other organizations for the blind across the globe, where were they going? We tend to like to take that approach because we get to share our experiences. We get to, talk to Salesforce as a unified group when there are issues or when we need certain things to change. So that was a big factor. But also very importantly is we wanted to take a lot of things off of IT's plate. So the cloud does that in general, but the ease of use with the Salesforce platform, and especially on the reporting side, the ability for executives to pull their own reports just was a godsend, right? So it was a couple of those factors that played a part. The opportunity to start with the P10 package and sort of see how it went for a particular business unit and then grow it from there was a really big part of that as well. And then there were great teams and great integrators available to us, both in Salesforce and in the sort of the integrator ecosystem. So a lot of that just sort of aligned, and it seemed to be the right choice, and we're still quite comfortable with it today.
Fantastic. Karl, do you have the same question over to you, just in terms of, what were some of the reasons that led your organization in this direction, and what, who was involved, and how's it going?
Yeah, so I'm a bit unique in that situation because I came in, the Mustard Seed was on Razor's Edge historically here for almost 10 years before. And so 2018, they had decided to move over to Salesforce. And the first year they moved over to Financial Force, which is maybe not the best way to do it, but they were very keen on moving over to a new financial system, and so they wanted to do that. And so I actually came in 2020. And so I was working with the people that were part of that transition for the first year and was able to kind of understand. And I was brought in really to do more of an audit of the system and see how we could optimize it more from that kind of perspective. But from talking to some of those that were there at the time, the big, as Frank said, the reporting was huge. It seemed like there was a lot of expense that was put into needing support and training and that kind of a thing for Razor's Edge. And so the attractiveness of having the trailhead training and all of that stuff that was free and onboarding was easier, was very, very attractive. The whole open API aspect of it, that it's not locked down kind of thing, you can customize it to do whatever you want. There were serious limitations that they had At that time, they wanted to really venture into the email automation and at the Mustard Seed. So we serve the homeless in our cities, and we have 30,000 plus volunteer database. And so the ability to integrate the volunteers into that same constituent base and see kind of a holistic picture of a constituent was something that everybody dreamed of and always wanted to have. And so that was a huge component of capability to do that. Data security was not one of the top back in 2017, but it certainly became a high priority since the 2020 blip with Blackbaud. And so the multi-factor authentication, has been awesome for us. It's been huge, just to be able to do that. We've done that with Microsoft 365 as well, and just kind of that security for us. So those are kind of the overall. I would just say that as they grew in complexity in multi-city sites, going to the cloud, wanting to be more comprehensive and having a customizable system was of the benefits that they were looking at. So,
well, at the risk of inserting a little humor into this conversation, I think as a former fundraiser, and I shouldn't say I'm a former fundraiser. I think I'll be a fundraiser forever. But I think certainly as we've looked at the last couple of years and we look at having, all the conversations around having command of your data in order to be able to raise more funds and really understand who you're interacting with, when and why. I think it's really top of mind, and gone are the days, and here's the humor part, where we could all grab our cup of coffee and sit around the conference room and talk about the different prospects and the different constituents that we're interacting with in a way, and compare notes. And the function of a distributed workforce, the idea that we might all be working from home or that we're across different markets even, the opportunity to be able to collaborate and have everyone have equal bearing and line of sight into their data, I think is perhaps the change that we were all thrust into a few years ago. And I believe it's probably here to stay. And I know, if I speak from personal experience, that was really one of the biggest pieces of the migration, was giving everyone on my fundraising team equal footing to have some sense of how we were interacting with the people that we were serving, as well as the people we were raising money from, as well as our volunteers, and of course our staff and program folks as well. So I think the holistic view and the ease of use is something I've heard both of you say in terms of how to approach it and sort of the why of it. I think one of the things, at the risk of I'll just jump in a different direction and ask the two of you to comment on this. I think one of the things that often organizations struggle with is that old expression, if it isn't broken, why fix it? Or how do I keep doing my day job and move through and keep the lights on and keep raising the money that I need to raise, even if I know deep down I need to have a better system and a system that's more user-friendly? How do I approach the curiosity and the courage to make a change like this? Can you, perhaps, Frank, could you jump in on this one and talk a little bit about how you brought your team along in those conversations about why to change from one to the other? And where the pressure points were. I think let's have an honest conversation about it.
Yeah, no, you know what? It had to be an honest conversation, especially with the fund development teams, because there's no ideal time.
Yeah,
there is zero ideal time. And at some point, organizations, and all organizations suffer this, they don't invest in themselves. If you're a sales organization, you are going to sacrifice yourself to make your numbers. If you're a service organization, you are going to sacrifice yourself to keep your customers happy. I personally believe that organizations have to invest in themselves. Otherwise, somewhere down the road, and there are a lot of companies that suffer this, and I even think Blackbaud is one of those companies that may have suffered this over the years, they will start to fail. And so if you need to make the transition, I don't care if it's 6 months out or a year and a half out or 2 years out, you draw that line in the sand. It's like planning your vacation, right? I'm planning that vacation. Nothing is changing. I've booked my tickets and I am going, even though it may not be ideal or opportune at the time, because that's an investment in myself. Organizations have to do the exact same thing. You have to have good partnerships. So we found a very good partner to work with us, and I also believe that you need an FTE or something there, because the reality is people do have day jobs, and to do some of these transformational things off the side of your desk is not the right way to do it all the time. So we brought in an analyst, somebody with great Salesforce experience, and we ended up keeping him for 5 years because he drives business transformation. He drives the health of the system, and he keeps everybody off my back because he's really good at what he does. So, you know, it's a reasonable question, but you have to make that investment in yourself. Otherwise, you suffer what I tend to call technical debt. Eventually, they will come calling. You will have to pay.
I would also offer, at least in my experience, one of the things, you know, I really appreciate what you're saying, Frank, in terms of it's always hard to identify the right time to do it. It's also very true that many of us don't have extra headcount to do and to add someone. And I would just share, for the good of the order, that at least in my experience, I found the champion that was existing in my team, that and in 2 cases, it was actually one of the youngest people on the team who was not afraid of technology, who leaned all the way into Trailhead and all of the surrounding resources that exist in complement to something like this. And it became a real professional development opportunity for that person on the team. And we were able to elevate that person into a Salesforce champion. And there was a real sense of ownership from the entire team watching this person blossom in that way. So I share that as just an anecdote and a story that of something that happened to me. You look like you're going to say something else.
I just want to touch on something very quickly, because you're right. Not everybody has the FTEs to do this kind of thing. I don't think I've ever seen customer success programs as involved with as many offerings as Salesforce has. And the name escapes me right now, but when we bought our licenses, they're like, and you have access to these people, and you have access to these people, and you can get these professionals on board that'll map this out for you and stuff like that. I can't remember the program right now, Sterrin, but I know that's there, and no company has ever quite presented those options to us before. So that was pretty cool too.
Karl and Tamara, I want you to know, I see your question in the chat, but I'm going to ask Karl really quickly to react to what Frank and I are talking to, and then we'll get to organizational readiness.
Yeah, it's in general, I really enjoy an audit. You know, I mean, it's always an opportunity to have somebody come in with a fresh perspective and just have a lay of the land and look at ways that, you know, best practice that's out there. You know, have you guys considered this or that? And so we routinely do audits in different areas and systems of our department and our data, kind of, you know, the aspects of how we look at it. And that's always provoked us to do that. There's a university that we kind of get some consulting from, in a sense, where their database, like our constituent base is 300,000 and they're at about 420,000. Our revenue is 50 million, theirs is 120. So they're a little bit ahead of us in that regard. And so, you know, with decisions like what is the proportion of revenue that you guys are spending on a data team, on your system, on a per, you know, user, all of that we would compare to and look at other organizations that are doing something similar. So that, you know, we just firmly believed, and I have to give hats off to our CDO here. She's a big thinker, and she's just firmly believes that, you know, if we have clean data and we're using it to the best of our ability, that we can literally double our donation revenue with just doing better with the constituents that we have. And so we've seen that in the call center. We've seen that with lots of different tests and, you know, campaigns that we've done. So yeah, all of that together kind of, you know, points us in that direction.
It's interesting you say that, because I think I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of different organizations lately, and in the wake of a pandemic and with a potential recession looming, I think the idea of doing more with what you have and really understanding who the donors are that are on your file that you're interacting with, and retention is, I think, top of mind for every fundraiser in the industry right now. And when I think about, you know, Karl, as you mentioned, your CDO is, you know, clean data and really knowing who you're interacting with and when to really leverage that and hang on to those people. I think that's very important. And I think I see a lot of heads nodding here on the call. I mean, that's really what where we're at with fundraising right now. And it also leads into Tamara's question in the chat, which I think is an important one. I would offer, and then I'll invite Karl and Frank to weigh in on this, that, you know, the question about how or when to make the hard decision of what to bring forward, what to archive, and what you actually need. Let me wax philosophical and simply say that the opportunity to go through an evaluation around your database and around a migration is an opportunity to evaluate your business processes and actually ask yourself those questions. Because I think I'm an old lady in this business, and I can remember closets full of file cabinets of copies of donor gifts and checks. I mean, we all remember this. And we really have an opportunity with this kind of systemic change to take a pause and ask ourselves, what do we really need to hang on to, not only for an audit, but really in reality in terms of the trajectory and the relationship that we have with these donors, and how far back do you actually need to go? And it's an opportunity. I say to people all the time, don't simply take what you're doing now and recreate it in Salesforce. Take the opportunity to examine a migration and examine your business processes of what you actually do need, which leads me to my last comment about who needs to be involved. And this is a question that I will also throw out to Karl and to Frank. And the bottom line is that, and no harm, no foul to my IT friends on the phone here, but the business has to be at the table when you make decisions around how to set up these systems, because it is the fundraisers who know what they need to get out of the system. And so from start to finish, you need to be involved in the design of what you need to do your business in the future. And so if I say nothing else that resonates with all of you today, let me say this. If you are a chief development officer or you are in DevOps, you need to be involved in this process from the beginning so that what you build and the examination of those processes gives you what you need to do your job better. Not better, but more in a more frictionless way. So don't shy away. And I am a prototypical, I mean, here's the joke. I work at Salesforce and I am a development person. And there are days where I don't even understand the plumbing. That's what my friend Frank is for, is to help figure out and work with me to build the system that helps me raise more money with the people and with my team, and to make those, you know, those jobs a little easier. So that's my comment in terms of it's not an answer to how far back you need to go, but it's an invitation for you to use this process to ask you and your team those very questions. And then I'm gonna throw what do you recommend to evaluate organizational readiness? I'm going to ask Frank and Karl to answer that one. You know, what have you seen that's worked? And do you have a cautionary tale and advice of what not to do relative to organizational readiness? Any thoughts there? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I
Okay.
got to the button quicker, I guess. Yeah, well, see, so we have a very unique situation. We didn't start with fund development. we actually started with an app on the App Exchange to help us raise our guide dogs. That was our first crack, just an opportunity. So, and then a number of other programs before fund development, before donor management came in. So one thing, a couple things there. One, and you mentioned it, know what your outputs need to be. If, you know, what did one of the executives say at the time? We were killing ourselves with analytics. Like we were trying to run a million different reports, a million different ways. And it was analysis paralysis. That was the word that he said, right? So we reevaluated, we threw it all out. We said, okay, what 10, 15 major business reports, the gold standard of reports, do we need? And Salesforce allows, you know, it allows people to run their own stuff, but they cannot overwrite the gold standards. So that was number one. Know what your outputs are going to be. Reevaluate your processes. Are they all documented? We're a 100-year-old organization. Nothing was documented because they didn't document things, you know, 100 years ago, and they weren't applicable today, right? So that's a readiness factor, definitely. And then as we went through it, what we wish we had done better, because we built a very monolithic system that handles so many of our processes, was data governance. And so how we handle that now is through a Salesforce steering committee. All the major stakeholders within the business that own pieces of Salesforce, we get together, we fight the battle royales, we make sure that we are keeping things good for the record, which is the client record. It has to be good for everybody. And then there is awareness when we want to make changes to other aspects of the system. Those are the three sort of major points. A lot of the stuff that challenges other projects like training is very easy through Salesforce. Data imports, very easy. So many tools available to do that kind of stuff. But really, the data, the processes, the governance, you have to have that well understood, or else you'll build something that doesn't provide you with the outputs and the processes that you need.
Cool. Karl, any thoughts for you?
Yeah, repeat the question one more time, just so I have a.
So it's really like, what do you recommend in terms of evaluating your organizational readiness, and who needs to be involved and why? And like, and do you have what's worked well, what's not worked well? Do you have a cautionary tale around any of that? Like, if you could do it all over again?
Yeah, again, I wish I could speak to the whole process that they went through to get to that. I can only speak from what I've heard to a degree, and some of the things that I've, you know, experienced, still expanding our processes and our systems in general. But certainly the overarching drive was always, how do we centralize our data?
Yeah.
We have so many different databases for different things, number one. And then even just any relationship that we have, whether it's a vendor, government contract kind of work that we have, grants, foundations, our whole invoicing system, like everything together in one place, what would that look like? So I would say, from a learning perspective, the lack of documentation was a failure. You know, when we did this, everybody understands and agrees with that. It was it was migrated well. It was built for what we needed at that time. And we were heavily into an annual giving based kind of fundraising initiative. It was Rowena that came in that really helped fill out all the channels, the omni-channel fundraising aspect, where it was like Salesforce was built at that time at like a tall apartment of annual giving, but it wasn't necessarily built with the foundation and structure to do multi-channel, all aspects of fundraising. So we use it for direct mail. We still do direct mail, huge, digital, email, grant management, major gift, high value, legacy, capital, third party, do-it-yourself fundraising kits, events. I mean, so we had to redo our structure, which we've had to invest in. And one of the learnings that we've had is initially when I came in, it was like, okay, we need a Salesforce expert to help us to reconfigure some of this. And we had found, a local organization that was, they were really good at Salesforce, but they didn't know NPSP. And we learned that was huge. The uniqueness of the nonprofit success pack, and you can be an expert in Salesforce, but really not understand the constituent, cultivation nuances that charities need to think about. CRA, Canadian,
Yeah.
all of that, and the unique exchange apps that go only in Canada, because we'd spend so much time vetting it out, and it's great in the States, but not in Canada, for example. So to put all that together, when we found Belmar, it was like, man, these guys are NPSP experts, and that made all the difference for us in a sense. So we've routinely kind of taken opportunity to look at our system and just hear the pain points in the departments, volunteers, for example. How do we improve on that? And then getting them to come in and do a bit of an analysis on, okay, this is how you can improve on it. Just this year, there's so many things that came out as an update with Salesforce this last year that were just like, the grant management tool now is amazing. It was just like, they keep coming out with new stuff. And so we need somebody that's an expert outside of us, because we're a small team. So, well,
it's so funny what you're saying, Karl, reinforces a couple of things that come to mind for me about any migration of any system, whether it's the fundraising system or the financial system, that this is a journey, not a destination. And it will always be a work in progress. You also really highlighted and reinforced for me my earlier comment about the business being involved in the decision-making about what you need. So the development practitioners to be at the table with your partner and with IT to design something that is usable for the outcomes you need. What do you need to use the data for? And then let's build it the way it needs to be done. And there are plenty of out of the box solutions in that regard for NPSP. And that's where the particular nuances around either Karl's business or Frank's business or, Make-A-Wish Canada's business or whatever the case may be, that's where your partner really digs in with you and helps you really take a look at your business processes and what you need. And it answers Tamara's question up above in terms of, how do you look at what you need to hang on to and what you might actually be able to let go and simplify as a function of changing your platform. And with that, I do want to go back to the organizational readiness piece. I want to go back to that question relative to the comments that both of the gentlemen have made today is, the opportunity to get curious about what it would mean to change your systems in this regard and what it will take is something that is open to everyone and is actually open to everyone to do with Salesforce at no cost to you, to do the readiness with our teams to say, here's where you are, and to talk with us about what those pain points actually are. And then back to it's a journey, not a destination. Not every organization starts at the exact same place. There may be pieces, again, with the P10 program and others, where you start small and you understand what it takes and what are the pieces of your particular organization that need to be, and I don't want to say they're broken, but fixed or innovated first, and walk towards that in a way where you're able, as the business leader in partnership with your IT professional, to manage that pace of change. Because that's an expression, I think, that gets a lot of lip service in business school books all over the place. But when you're the fundraiser and you got Frank and Karl over there helping, design a system in partnership with a Belmar, you really do need to manage that pace of change to not make yourself crazy or to really to stress out your staff. And so I would say that the organizational readiness piece, you can do that anytime, and you can do it with Salesforce and with a partner, and really just kind of start to get curious about what might be possible. So with that, there's a question in the chat, Karl, or excuse me, Frank, is it Karl or it's Karl, I guess. Someone's asking, Karl, how do you use Salesforce to manage that data quality in partnership with your CDO?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Part of it goes back to the other question as well about how much data do you keep? I mean, in a perfect world, we have 38 years of donor history. I would absolutely want to keep every note, every transaction, every communication with every donor that was possible, because you just, and we've never had an issue of is it too big, like is our database too big kind of thing. Like so cleaning it for us is about optimizing it. There's the Einstein Analytics part of Salesforce that we're just barely tapping into, but the predictive ability to say who is our next best donors to focus on with different campaigns, for example, and what is that strategy? That's the analytics part that is mining out the gold of the data. And so we have about 38 different segments for our campaigns that everybody is coded to, in a sense. If you add city packages to that, we have over 100. And so those codes go on direct mail, coupons and return mail envelopes and all of that. But it's really, looking at, we have about 12 to 15 officers that focus on that high value major gift portion of the top part of our constituent base, for example. And we've instituted an RFM formula, to help us focus on the 150 portfolio that each officer has. And then our call center is really hitting that everything underneath that up into a point of where we can optimize with like iWave and CharityCan, integrating these tools to help do that prospecting and research, to seeing, what are the other gems that are in here that we don't have the time of 300,000 constituents to dive into. We're only hitting the top, 2,500 of our database is covered by our officers. Mm-hmm. So our call center is trying to hit goals of 50,000 constituents in a year. So we can handle we sometimes get 300 phone calls a day in December. And so we've currently got 12 call center staff, and inbound calls and outbound call campaigns are part of that strategy. So I hope that answers some of that question.
Frank, do you have a comment on that about how your team works with data hygiene?
I've got specialists to deal with that, so I can't go too far into the weeds, just because I can't. But what I do know is we have a lot more options than we had with Razor's Edge. We had to bring a lot of stuff out, clean it, get it back in. So that was problematic, whereas we can do a lot more in line. Deduplication, and again, this is a result of the fact that we have so many aspects of our business leveraging the platform. Deduping is the biggest problem. So a lot of the validation rules that we're able to build in are extremely helpful. The predictive stuff is good as well. They're leveraging all that they can. The beauty of Salesforce for us, a Blackbaud type product tells you how to do your job, and a dynamic product, you have to build everything from scratch. Salesforce was that nice little in the middle where it gave us a lot of the things we sort of needed, and we could tweak all the things we do. In preparation for this call, I went and talked to the folks that set up our segmentation. I think it's like 200 some odd segments that we do. Salesforce gives us standard segmentation, which is great. And we actually publish that for others to use. But the stuff that drives our direct marketing, for example, that's very complex. And we built it all out, and that's what the direct marketing team uses. Right. And I'm almost getting tired of celebrating their successes, because at all the meetings, it's just like, and they made more money. And it's like, good for them. Can I have some of that for infrastructure? But anyhow, it's all that flexibility that we get with a Salesforce platform. I'm really happy that we're not told we can't do that. I'm sorry, you can't do that. You can't touch that database. You can't touch that table. We're complicated that way, and we're able to do our jobs better now.
Well, it's interesting. I will share on a personal note. It's funny, I made the joke about the conference room where we would all walk in a room with rulers and our 6 Excel spreadsheets and compare notes. And we've all been there and done that. What's interesting is my last development job, I walked into an organization, and I'm going to share this anecdote because I think it will resonate with many of the fundraisers on the call. And I was hired, we're going to hire a crackerjack fundraiser to come in and run $100 million campaign for us. And I got there and we had 9 databases, nine of them in 9 different areas of the business. And I full stop said, I cannot raise $100 million with 9 different data sets where I am certain there are the same people in certain data sets. And we went through this process, and it was not easy. And I'm not going to pretend that it was easy, but it was so worth it, because the exercise of bringing the 9 different data set owners together and to really uncover the opportunity that really existed on the file enabled me as a fundraiser to actually do some predictive analytics of what was actually possible to raise, not just what was desired by those in leadership and in the program in terms of what, we want $100 million because it's our 100th anniversary. And in the end, through the process of the data hygiene, the deduping, and the real understanding of how and where we were interacting with all of these donors, the conversations that the fundraisers were able to have with those donors were richer as a function of having the entire relationship known. So we, people in a clinical operation, people in a school, people in a community program, you can actually say, we understand you're interacting with us on all of these different ways. And I'm pleased to say that, while the implementation took between 12 and 18 months to do, the campaign was successfully completed at $111 million. But it would never have happened if I had been futzing with 9 different data sets. And so I think, again, as fundraisers, we intuitively know that, which is why we've been in conference room with spreadsheets and rulers together for decades. This is just an opportunity to pull that together in a way where it democratizes the data. We get to that place where it's not my event donors and this, that, or the other thing. And it's there are people who are interacting with the organization and the organization's mission. And it becomes a much more community-minded exercise. And and you do, as Frank said, you raise more money in the end as a function of doing that. I'm curious, I'm watching the clock, and we are coming up on the Q&A portion. I want to invite the audience to drop questions into the chat, or to come off mute if you'd like and ask the question of either myself, Frank, or Karl. I think if that's okay with Eric, I think that's, we'll go that way. Does anybody want to throw one out there, or I can keep asking questions? Here's one. How does Salesforce support nonprofits? Kelly, let me ask you just to clarify the question. Do you mean in terms of how we support the nonprofits through the process of migration, or are you meaning support nonprofit? Just give me a little more clarity on that one, and I'm happy to answer. And
yeah, through the migration.
Okay, so I would say that one of the most remarkable things. And again, and I'll say this, I have been both a Blackbaud and a Salesforce customer. That is true of me. I wouldn't have been a fundraiser if that weren't true. What I find remarkable about the way Salesforce goes through this process in partnership with the nonprofits and with the partners is it really is a swarm or a surround effort. And there are the teams at Salesforce that come and bring their experience to bear on this include industry experts like myself who have lived experience in the sector and know from what we're talking about. We have solution engineers that will dig in with you and your team to identify the pain points that you know of and maybe the ones you don't know of. We also encourage and bridge the conversations between the business, meaning the fundraisers, and the IT folks. And then in addition to that, we bring to bear and help you with the partner process, like a Belmar, for example, to make sure that we're matching your use case and what you're trying to do with the right talent on our side, as well as with the right partner at the right time. And so that we're helping you really create and craft your vision for your organization and helping you make the choices about your roadmap and your transformation so that, again, you as leaders can manage your pace of change. I don't know, Karl and Frank, if you want to comment on what that experience was like for you, that might be helpful. That was my experience as a customer, and now it's also my job.
Am I allowed to comment that we got great pricing? I mean, you do well by nonprofits.
Yeah.
Any nonprofit, and Microsoft has done the same for us in other areas, and any nonprofit that has the opportunity to leverage enterprise class platforms, enterprise class security at a reduced rate should take advantage of that. Okay, so number one. Number two, and this is just because of the industry that I'm in, and I'm sure there are some nonprofits in here that serve Canadians with disabilities. Your commitment, Salesforce's commitment to inclusion, accessibility, is critical, right? It's the way to do things. It actually drives simplicity and ease of use if you do things that way. So that's very much important to us. May not be important to everybody, but I think it's important that organizations do that, because you may want to hire someone with vision loss one day, or with a print disability of some sort, and you can achieve your accessibility objectives on this platform. So that was really important to us, and everything else you said, Sterrin, I will absolutely back that up.
Karl, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I can't compare pricing because I wasn't involved with that part of it with Razor's Edge, but our support, I mean, the support that we get from Salesforce is awesome. I have no complaints at all. Our account manager, Nikki, has introduced us to some amazing Canadian other organizations that are integrating. They're like, I guess, gold partners with Salesforce. Is that a thing? Gold partners. And so they're a lot of them have actually done pro bono work for us just because they believed in what we were doing and wanted to help. And so there's just been lots of cool things like that have happened over the years. And so, yeah, it's been good.
I would just offer, after spending almost 30 years of my life in the nonprofit sector, it was with intention that I walked towards Salesforce in terms of how they walk the walk, and come alongside the nonprofit organizations that I've spent basically my whole life in service of, to help do this work. And I've been fascinated by how the experience in the for-profit sector, we as nonprofit professionals get to leverage all of that learning of the best-in-class marketing organizations, best-in-class sales organizations, best-in-class financial organizations, best-in-class healthcare organizations, and get to do that in our nonprofit organizations, great and small, with the weight of that experience. And it's there for the taking, I would share. Brian has a question. I'll ask maybe Frank to take this one. How difficult was the conversion from RE? Did you talked a little bit about this? Maybe what were some of the pain points?
Yeah, the toughest part initially was convincing an army of fund development professionals to leave something they had known for decades, right? That was a challenge. So that was on us. That was on us. That was on Salesforce. It was our job to bring them, to show them, to educate them on what was possible. And once the light bulbs started going off, I mean, everybody was blown away, right? I can do everything on my phone. Oh my God, this is so easy. You know, oh, I have access to data from programs and from volunteerism and from advocacy, right? So once the light bulbs started happening, the floodgates opened and everybody's like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. But that was very challenging. And that's a very respectful comment. I can appreciate that. Data migration is always a challenge. Doesn't matter what the platform is. You know, if you have to migrate a lot of data. We touched on that. That took a lot of time because the data is important. You have to get it right. I don't want to get Frank Lombardi's, you know, direct mail. That would be weird. So, you know, that was the other big challenge. Aside from that, I'm happy to say that most of our deployments for all our major business areas took place within 6 to 12 months, right? So we're not talking about 2-year projects anymore. Very fast deployments, and never perfect. We fail forward as an organization. So I always talk about the fact that you have to have a continuous improvement stream to your project, to your methodology. And that's just a matter of taking care. Again, comes back to taking care of yourself, taking care of your systems, maintaining good health. It's like going to the gym. You know, I got to get out there every now and again to keep it up, right? So.
Any thoughts on that, Karl, as we get close to time?
Good points. Just in the data migration, the data cleanup and making sure that it's going in. From what I understand, Razor's Edge or Blackbaud would have. I mean, you could bring over all the data. There's no problem, but Salesforce gives you a lot more fields to work with, and so you've got to take that time to separate the single row of information, for example, that Blackbaud would squeeze it into with commas, and you've got to properly, you know, separate it and really clean it up to do that well. So that's what I've heard and have helped, in a sense, other organizations walk through as well. Yeah, the user case, go check a demo, like just try it, you know, get them to do a demo for you. And it's the use, and I mean, our officers are now using it on their phone, and the ease of use of having all that information live and updating notes and stuff like that, it's just been amazing for the user case. So since 2018, I mean, I could just say we've done well. We're continually unpacking the amazingness of NPSP, and it's only getting better and better. So yeah.
And you know, it's interesting. This could probably be a whole other webinar, but I will share it as, again, another personal anecdote that I think one of the other things that we have to think about relative to our teams and our workforce is, and as I get older and they get younger, there are certain things about philanthropy that will always remain true. And the first is that people give to people. But as our workforce continues to lean into this work of philanthropy and to be connecting with people, our ability as fundraising leaders and as IT leaders to make that experience of doing that courageous work of philanthropy easier and more frictionless, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. It's a workforce issue, actually. If it's hard to access your prospect lists and hard to enter the notes, then it won't happen. If it becomes easier for our frontline fundraisers to interact with analytics and dashboards, and we take it upon ourselves to teach them how to do that, with a tool that is designed for them to succeed, I think we have the ability to create an entire new generation of fundraisers who would be unstoppable. Is it perfect? No. And again, I come back to, it's a journey, not a destination. And I think it's the beauty and the power of Salesforce in partnership with a Belmar and in partnership with your organizations is to design something that works for your mission and for your leaders in a way that's meaningful so that they can play to the potential in your data file in a way that creates additional velocity and enables you to retain and hang on to the donors that you have and do more with them so that they can support your mission. So with that, we are actually, believe it or not, we just made it right under the wire. I would love to thank Frank and Karl for joining me today for this conversation. And I would also like to say this conversation is the beginning and is an invitation for all of you to reach out to me, to Matthew and the team at Belmar, to Karl or to Frank or to anyone at Salesforce, our Salesforce team up in Canada, to find out more and to ask the questions you didn't have a chance to ask today. Again, this is an invitation for you to get curious about this. I thank Frank and Karl for joining me for this conversation, for Belmar for bringing us together. And we look forward to connecting and talking more. And so thanks for being with us.